asking the questions mainstream journalists will never ask. This is your Richie Allen Show on richieallen.co.uk, Fab Radio 2 in Manchester, and triggerwarning.tv.
I met Mark Steele this morning. Now, I was speaking with Annie Logical on the programme last week about 5G, and Annie brought up Mark. She talked about him and how he was alerting people to the fact that thousands of transmitters were appearing on lampposts in the city of Gateshead in the northeast of the country. Now, Mark is the Chief Technology Officer at a company called Revu. They're really into technology for motorcycle helmets. Fascinating company. Like I said, he's based in Gateshead. His interest in this came when he began to look for answers as to why he was suffering from insomnia, why he was agitated, why he was uncomfortable, general discomfort, and he found that the local authority had overseen the fitting of these transmitters to lampposts in the area, including lampposts only a few metres from his home. His investigations into what was going on, or his investigation into what was or is going on, and his correspondence with the local council has thrown up some startling and very disturbing facts about the rollout of 5G. This guy is the real deal. He's not a conspiracy theorist. He is a tech expert who only because of his own experiences began to look into what is really going on here and began to ask some serious questions. I spoke with him this morning, had to pre-record it because of his own job. Fascinating man. It's really interesting, this. Pay attention to it. And I first asked him, well, I tell you what, we'll just play it. Here's me speaking with Mark Steele earlier today, the Chief Technology Officer with the company Revu. Have a listen. Mark, welcome to the programme. Thanks so much for coming on. First of all, I'm guessing it's a wee bit cold up there in Gateshead, is it?
Absolutely. It's got something to do with this global warming, I think. It's got something to do with where it's all the carbon dioxide.
Where is global warming? Where is it? Absolutely.
Where's the carbon dioxide? That's the big question. It's obviously moved, so I think the Russians have stolen it.
The Russians might well have stolen it. That's a whole other issue we could get into.
It's definitely sent all the snow over.
well, I was thinking this morning, it's chilly in South Manchester, but I was thinking when I'm going to be speaking to Mark in Gateshead, maybe I shouldn't complain too much about the cold. You're very welcome to the programme. Thanks for coming on. We're following up, of course, a conversation I had with Annie Logical recently. I must also point out, Mark has been trying to get in touch with me for a while, sending me information that would be of huge interest to this programme and to our audience, but I genuinely didn't receive it. If I had, I would have got back to him, but I'm glad that we are connected now. Mark, tell our listeners a little bit about you and how you came to be writing about and talking about 5G technology, mobile technology, EMF and Wi-Fi and all of that. Go ahead.
Well, the team, myself, we came across, 5G by more accident than design. And for those that, who don't know me, I'm the Chief Technology Officer at a company called Revu. And what I'm about to reveal to you is information that has been gathered over 15 years of research and development into safe head-up display systems. That's what we do, weapon sight systems and other unique signal processing systems. Now, in the knowledge that the visible part electromagnetic radiation spectrum, is a known hazard. I mean, it's a registered hazard. It guided our creation of an optical waveguide inside a racing sports helmet invention. So, if anybody knows about the Revu project, they'll know that, we developed a waveguide inside a head-up display system in a motorsports product. Now, we specifically designed that waveguide to mitigate the risk of optical radiation. You shouldn't really have light shone in your eyes. And what we knew, and I'm sure everyone will agree from a product development perspective, is you don't intentionally want to make people sick from your products. It's not something that's morally acceptable or economically viable. It's stupid, really, and more criminal. So after having worked exclusively, this is sort of my background, I've worked exclusively on research and development projects over my full life. Apart from the 4 years I spent as a engineering apprentice. The research I've been involved with has been diverse and centered mainly across the energy sector. A number of years in secret nuclear research, and then oil and gas, multi-phase flow metering product development, and biologically inspired signal systems. I work with some very, very clever people. Chap, I'll not name him yet because I haven't asked his permission. He's one of the leading scientists in the world and headed up a US naval subsea spooky operation, where submarines where they're looking at things. So I do and have worked with that eminent scientist. Right, I captured the intellectual property for Shell Technology Ventures. That's one of the big oil and gas companies, because obviously I know about patents. I'm an innovator myself. I've got quite a lot of patents to my name. So I understand about technology and patents, etc. So I was tasked to actually capture, because a lot of these professors, very, very, very bright. However, they sometimes miss the value, because obviously I'm a businessman as well. Yeah. Making money is really important to business and to employ people, etc. So as you can imagine, great care has to be taken regard risk analysis before products or new developments can be deployed. And the reason the nuclear and oil and gas industry would never deploy any untested technology, as the results could prove to be catastrophic. Technological advances have to be fully risk assessed and tested to known parameters, so known safety standards, and current, to ascertain their full working envelope. The Piper Alpha tragedy, and I had quite a few pals that were on that, was a timely warning to us all in industry and to others as to how things can go terribly wrong if mistakes are made. Which takes me back to our very successful head-up display systems business, which came under a sustained, illegal, well-resourced attack from one of the world's largest technology companies. The antitrust actions of that company's employees I can't discuss yet due to ongoing legal reasons. However, when we, and in particular I, researched their very well-resourced competing head-up display systems, I was appalled at the haphazard design and predicted the failure of that globally well-known product, which directed an uncontrolled full-spectrum architecture from a pulsing optical radiation source, a projector basically, onto a person's retina. This wasn't risk assessed, a very risky strategy for any business, let alone one of the largest technology companies on the planet, as optical radiation is a known hazard and emitting devices are obliged to be tested by law.
How could they get away with it, Mark? How could they get away with that? How could they not have to put in place risk assessment analysis for that particular product? How was that allowed to happen?
I'm still scratching my head. I'm still scratching my head. I just don't, I don't get it. I still don't get it. And this thing hasn't stopped. We made representations to trade and standards. We made representations to government agencies and others about the potential for these products to do harm. And we were ignored.
We were just ignored.
We also made representations about the hacking, about the illegal attack. We had police involvement, GCHQ. In fact, one of the directors went down and spoke to a government minister. We were basically told that, we're just a little country now. And seemingly, Theresa doesn't think it's a bad idea to have a run at the Russians and have a bit jump about and shout on about it. But at the time, we were told, keep your head down, don't say anything. This is all just all a little bit too hard to handle.
Now, which government departments should have been interested in this? Defence, Health, and the Home Office, right?
Everybody.
Everybody.
The police, everybody. Industrial espionage is an attack on the country. Obviously, if this is about generating wealth, as a business, our business was attacked. That business did employ people. It creates wealth for the revenue. The revenue paying by our weapons systems and employ our military and military services and, intelligence agencies. That's all paid out as taxes that companies and private companies pay. So consequently, it's extremely important. It's critical to the infrastructure of the country that developing technology companies are not attacked. So consequently, we thought we'd get a bit of help. Didn't get any. That was pretty strange. Now, this type of retinal illumination really should only ever be carried out for short periods for medical reasons, or as in the in a weapons site, you use a controlled architecture. It's around 560 nanometers. It's the part of the spectrum that's less biologically hazardous, and it's the reason why most weapon sight systems are green. I mean, a full spectrum. Some of the other frequencies, for a number of other complex reasons, like energy in the photon frequency that can quickly damage the retina. Some of this can damage DNA, and this is not power dependent. It's the frequency of the wave. And this is the reason, like I said before, weapon sight systems are usually green, as they are less, biologically damaging. So we've cleared that one up, right? So let's talk about the 5G. I've heard a lot of people got to sort of clear up what 5G is first, because I've heard a lot of the narrative, and I've heard a lot of what people say. I've heard a lot of what experts say. 5G basically means more. It's more 1G, 2G, 3G, 4G, 5G, and where 5G starts to really get interesting, 5G is ubiquitous. Billions of smaller cellular systems, billions more, your smart TV, your smart device, anything that's smart, so it can all be interconnected, so somebody can listen to what you're doing. They can interrogate the environment. They can do 3D mapping, all, basic human rights violations, right across the board. And what they most certainly haven't done with 5G is risk assessed it for harm. It's the reason why the FCC are rushing it out the USA. It's because if you were to test it, if it was to go through any risk analysis, it'll fail.
You've hit on something very important there, something really important. If you ask the average smartphone user, and 70% of the country is addicted, 70% of those who have these phones suffer from something called nomophobia. They're terrified of not being able to use the phone or have it by their side. It's crazy. So if you ask anybody, what is it? They'll say, well, it's just great. It's the latest upgrade, 5th generation. It's all about speed. But it isn't about speed. What you're saying is about, it's a whole new range of possibilities that those who basically roll out the technology, it gives them far greater access to everything there is to know about us that they've ever had before. But to Joe and Josephine Smith, Mark, it's just all about speed, but it's got nothing to do with speed.
It's got nothing to do with speed. 5G is a weapon. 5G is a sophisticated weapon system. All right. The South Koreans, in fact, somebody blew the gaff the other day. I wouldn't have said this, by the way. However, it's been in the press. In Bloomberg, it was reported 3 weeks ago that the 5G array, because it's a phased array weapon, operating outside of any of the current regulatory standards, and it was being used to attack porcine, so wild boar in the jungle. Now, I don't know if anybody knows anything about weapon systems out there. I do. And what you normally do when you develop your weapon systems, test them on the pigs. The reason why you test them on pigs, they're very much like humans. So you can chop them up and you can actually have a look and see exactly what damage you've done. So it's a well-known path for weapon systems, and it's something. It was actually reported in Bloomberg. I was pretty surprised. I'm not sure if somebody's telegraphing to somebody to tell them what 5G really is. Now, what's really absolutely appalling is the fact that some of these frequencies and spectrums, and I know you've had people on who've spoken about this before, some of these spectrums and frequencies have not been risk assessed in regard to biology, about cellular function. We can imagine, I'm pretty sure that some of the blood biology issues being impacted by microwave radiation will cause hair loss. I know from your picture, Richie, and not matter to you.
I'm not worried about that, Mark. No, I'm not. No, but the brain power.
Well, I think there's a lot of women out there who'll be absolutely devastated when they know that the hair's going to fall out.
Yeah,
it actually causes blood stacking. You don't need a lot of it. It's one of the issues, and I'll come to that in a minute about the international regulatory guidelines. They are totally and absolutely ineffective.
Let me jump in there now, because you know that this is going out on commercial radio. That's not an excuse for me to be a decent journalist. I think I'm a half decent journalist anyway. Regardless of where this is going out, I've got to ask you, and not to impugn you at all, but to ask you, how do we know so far? How do we know that the exposure to this, Mark, will result in hair loss and will result in some of these other, very recognisable side effects? How do we know that?
Well, there's the transmitters that they fitted to the street lighting gates. And I mean, I spoke at a conference in Europe about the bugs and small flying pollinators, etc., and all dying.
Yeah.
We've passed over information or the RSPB, total waste of time. Obviously hacked, the same as Oxfam have been hacked. One of the things I want to make clear to everyone, some of the salaries that these individuals, these organisations receive, I call them gagging salaries. It's actually to stop them from speaking out. If you pay somebody, £400,000, £500,000, you've got people in government getting these type of salaries. And the reason for that is because really they couldn't run a corner shop. They know that. The people that pay them the salaries know that, and they know that they could never, ever command that type of salary anywhere. And it's one of the reasons why, and we're all a little bit guilty of this, is where somebody can come along and pay you a few bob to keep your gob shut. So the trouble that we'll have with 5G, this is so much of an existential threat to the economy, to the environment, and to humanity. I've had to speak out. I haven't got much of a choice. Another reason why I knew a little bit more about this, I had a neighbour knocked on my door bleeding from the nose in the middle of the night. I just had a lady contact me on Facebook yesterday. A young 5-year-old child's bleeding profusely at night from the nose. Microwave radiation causes a thing called relay. It's a stacking of the blood at non-thermal values, and obviously causes nosebleeds. It's well-known, recognised sort of symptoms from exposure to this type of non-thermal microwave radiation. So it's pretty dangerous. And there's all the other, it's a classified carcinogen. We know it's a class A cancer-causing radiation. That's why everybody's getting cancer, and also we're seeing a significant drop in the population.
Now, before we talk more about that, the population depletion and sperm counts, and you also mentioned something. I'm really interested in this, Mark. You mentioned pollinators as well, bees and butterflies, and we've reported on levels of dementia in the bee population as reported by Ivy League universities, and yet that story seems to have gone away. Let me just go to, and by the way, Mark Steele.
Well, Richie, there's the one thing I'd like to cover off on bees. We actually contacted the government agencies for bees, and they told us they actually had research that showed that bees weren't affected by telecoms. That actually carried out research. We were amazed at that because we've got lots of research where we've actually looked into this and shown that these telecoms absolutely annihilate bees. So we really wanted to see this piece of research. And that government agency have now, after sending them an FOI, have come back and told us they don't have any.
Wow.
So why would government agents or agencies or institutions want to misinform?
Well, do you know something, Mark? If they had any research that proved, or at least that showed that telecoms don't affect bees, that research would have been leaked, or not leaked, but would have been released to the media. Of course,
no, we know that we know these microwave radiation waves.
Yeah.
They have a catastrophic effect on smaller bullied insects, animals, etc. It's like going back to this transmitter. Our local authority in Gateshead, and this is happening right across the country. We believe there's about 400,000 of these particular 5G transmitters. It's the 5G hardware
on lampposts now. And just stop there just for 1 second, Mark, because this is huge. This is the reason. It's one of the reasons that Mark contacted the programme some time ago, and Anne-Marie Carey, Annie Logical, and other people urged us to get in touch with Mark, because this is big, this. And I know Mark has spoke about this elsewhere, but a lot of our listeners won't be aware of this unless they've followed Mark and they've found out about his work through other avenues. But you're talking about, you discovered that there are transmitters attached to lampposts in Gateshead, but not just to a few dozen lampposts, Mark. They're everywhere. What are these transmitters? How visible are they? And what are they doing?
They're a new type of antenna design specifically for 5G. All right, they're masquerading as control management systems. Yeah, councils will tell you that control management system, nothing of the sort. I know there's a few people have removed some in our near locality, obviously concerned about their children's health and well-being, and obviously there's humanitarian crime we're talking about here.
Yeah.
So there's been a few removed. The lights hasn't affected the lights control systems at all. That transmitter is most certainly. Well, I know the council told me it wasn't even a microwave radiation transmitter, even though I know that microwave radiation starts at 300 megahertz, and this thing's transmitting at 868. The ignorance is totally, understandable. I'm not expecting them to be scientists, but they're buying into equipment, they're buying into stuff using public funds. One of the reasons why local authorities are short of cash, they're supporting telecoms companies. I've never seen anything in my rates where my local authority have told me that the money that I'm giving them is going to support privately held shareholder, multi-billion pound valued telecoms businesses, and also that transferring the liability. We know that these cancer causing just is one of the eventual health effects. These transmitters are absolutely uninsurable. Lloyd's of London will not indemnify any transmission system in harm to humans. And the reason for that is because they read the same research as what I read,
yeah,
and tells them that extremely hazardous. And what the local authorities have done, they have took the liability from the telecoms companies who were really responsible for this, and have moved that onto the public sector by putting these transmitters onto street lighting owned by the local authorities.
Can I ask you to confirm something, Mark? This is really... Are you saying... I probably read this wrong, so it's good that you might correct me, or maybe I didn't read it wrong. The third party who are manufacturing these transmitters, they are not renting lamppost space from the council, but rather the council is subsidising these companies with...
Of course they are.
Oh, holy shit. So there's no payoff for the local taxpayer whatsoever. There's nothing in it for you or for anybody else.
We're paying for it.
Wow, it's being subsidised by the council. Now, how do you know this? I'm asking. I've already done my research on you over the weekend, so I know how you know this. But our listeners will be shouting at me, how does he know this, Richie? How did you find this out? You've been in communication with people on the council.
Yeah,
right?
I've sent the councillor FYs.
Yeah.
over the last few years, last
freedom of information,
years,
yeah,
getting very, very little back. It's either confidential. I mean, they're secrets. They have a scientist, etc. I mean, I've tried to through an FY, trying to get them to tell me who their partner is. I know who their partner is, by the way. Anyway, I've tried to ask them through an FY.
Who is the partner?
I'm not going to say here.
Okay.
I'm not going to say. But I know who that partner is. I mean, you've got to remember these devices are used for 3D mapping. I can 3D map your home. It's actually a radar system. So I can 3D map your home. I can look at you in your bedroom. I can actually monitor you in your home with these transmitters that put on the lighting system outside. I've got the picture. It's a violation of human rights. It breaks every single law under the planet.
And you've gone to these things with the gauge, with the EMF gauge. I've seen the videos, and I am going to tweet links to where people can follow Mark on Twitter, YouTube, because he's put these excellent videos on YouTube. I've been watching them over the weekend in preparation for this conversation, and I will put links out there. Well, I can't tweet at the moment, but on Facebook and on my own website, so you can see these videos. What Mark is telling us here today, he's demonstrated this physically on video on his YouTube videos. So these things can actually, I mean, this is proper Blade Runner, planet dystopia, future stuff, Orwellian stuff. These things can take a look at you through the walls of your house. You're totally unaware of it, of course. It's just
Oh
happening.
yeah, totally unaware. Well, one of the transmitters, we've had 31,000. I think it's about 875 transmitters fitted to every new LED streetlight. It basically turned the whole of Gateshead into a microwave oven. Now, what's quite interesting, we have in ovens and connotations with ovens, and especially gas ovens, you know how that panned out.
Yeah.
And we have one of the largest Orthodox Jew populations outside of Israel in Gateshead.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, we do. The current transmitter on these streetlights, it's a 25 milliwatt transmitter. Now the maximum at £200 meal. So anybody that's under 14 stone, you're in trouble. The maximum to a £200 meal is 1 milliwatt. 1 milliwatt. That transmitter has 25 milliwatts, and that's how I know, without having to carry out any significant research project, that any pollinator, any moth, some of them protected, that would fly, that would be attracted to the LED street lamp and got within a couple of meters, that transmitter, that transmission would annihilate them. If anybody looks at the videos, as you've mentioned before, Richie, you'll see that the transmissions that are measuring with the meter, they equate to what the manufacturer's data. So at distance, I mean, I've measured in a baby's bedroom at some 40 meters, 800 millivolts. That equates to a 25 milliwatt transmitter on the top of that light. That light has no warning. Anyone could be working near it. We have these transmitters at close proximity to people's homes. There's no warnings. Window cleaners, scaffolders, people up in areas where they get close to these transmitters are at significant risk of kidney damage, other types of damage. And that's forgetting about the 5G system. This is just the basic. This is a basic transmitter. This is, forget about its 5G systems capability. We're just talking about the actual emission of radiation here. So
and the problem you have is that sort of organ damage doesn't show up immediately. It takes a bit of time to develop, doesn't it? So it's not going to show immediately when people go for their checkups or whatever. It's going to take time. It's not to say it won't happen. It might very well happen as you're describing it, but it won't be instant. Therefore, the local population won't get any red alerts or they won't get any.
Well, no.
This
Richie,
is the thing.
The nosebleeds.
Well, apart from the nosebleeds, yeah.
Nosebleeds, neurological disorders, brain fog, and short-term memory loss. I mean, we're talking about leading on to dementia. Massive impact on the economy, by the way. I mean, if we had a chap up a hill, right, sitting in a cave, stroking a white cat with a monocle on, I could understand it. If there was somebody really like that who planned this. But I think this whole thing's come about through ignorance, incompetence, corruption, and maybe somebody sitting up in a cave stroking a white cat. I don't get that because I'm not in, one of the things, Richie, I'm not into that whole conspiracy thing at all. What I like to do, I leave the conspiracy to the police.
Fair enough.
Police, that's their job to uncover conspiracies.
You like to talk about what you can prove. What you can put your fingers on. Just want to go back to something. You mentioned Orthodox Jewish population. Why is that relevant?
Well, it's I was a bit surprised. I spoke to the Jewish community, and they spoke to the council. The council misinformed them, like they misinform everybody. Keep telling everybody it's a control management system, not microwave radiation at all. I just think it's a very interesting point that we have one of the largest Orthodox Jew populations outside of Israel, and we have been visited with this microwave oven, because that's basically what it is. That's just pouring energy, microwave pulsed radiation into people's bedroom windows. Now that will reduce it's a fertility issue, miscarriage issue. We know that this type of radiation increases miscarriage by about 300%. This 860, 870 megahertz frequency, we're not really sure because it's totally experimental and breach the Nuremberg Code.
Orthodox Jews, of course, are pretty much against the state of Israel, the existence of it.
Well, I'm not really sure the politics on it, but what I do know, I know that as a community, they're very, very. Like from a fertility perspective, I think they've got sort of rules, not rules and regulations, but they've got a diktat that states you've got to have as many children as possible, that sort of thing. And this is pretty interesting. These transmitters have been situated right outside people's bedroom windows. The radiation I'm measuring upstairs, I'm telling anyone who's pregnant, any, small children, vulnerable people with cancer and things like that, people with, implants, any type of metal implant, it increases the SAR value, it increases the risk to developing cancer, hip cancer, anybody with any sort of hip replacements, anything like that, they must stay downstairs. The radiation levels we're measuring up in bedrooms because of this blanket radiation transmission from the 31,000 plus transmitters is 4 and 5 times what it is downstairs. Now, at night, this is another issue. At night, you should really try and be as exposed as little as possible. In fact, zero. International regulatory sort of, there's a number of different regulations out there. Don't take the ICNIRP, and I'll go into that in a minute. That's a total waste of time. Should be totally disregarded. In fact, some of those people should be in prison, as some of the individuals at PHE who are currently misinforming ministers about the hazards and dangers from this type of radiation, because somebody thought it was a great idea to gather intelligence and data on you. Unfortunately, all those systems are now compromised, so it's not that GCHQ or the NSA is gathering the data. It's some other rogue elements, rogue terrorist organization, or even a foreign country, because obviously we know that the NSA is in our sanctum's being hacked. We know that everything that GCHQ sends over to them, so the data gathering basically is being harvested by someone else. It's a bit of a, let's say, for want of a better word, foolball, something Americans like to use. Right? This thing just hasn't been thought out. It hasn't been strategized. And believe you me, I'm hoping that some of our intelligence, military intelligence people are listening to this podcast. I'm sure that they do. They're tasked to do it. I'm sure they do. They can take this back to their leaders and tell them, the whole of this country is at risk. It's a national security issue. We can be attacked in our bedrooms, in our homes, from a weapon system that's been rolled out through ignorance, greed, and corruption. Now, there's got to be good people within those organisations.
But the media, well, we're going to take a very quick break. When we come back, I'm looking at the time here, because obviously we're talking in the AM, and this is going to be part of the live show, which is finite, sadly. I'm going to take a quick break, then we'll come back and we'll talk about the legality of this. And Mark's been challenging the local authority in Gateshead. The media is absent, Mark. Over the weekend, the press has been caught up talking about the gathering of 50 million Facebook profiles to be used against American people to manipulate their choices in the election, and all of this nonsense, none of which can be proven, by the way. A lot of it is conjecture. But while all that's going on, what you've been describing is real, and it's tangible, and it's right there, and it's right across this country. And if it's the deep state of the United Kingdom that's behind this mass surveillance on the population of the United Kingdom, you're asking some very good questions about the security of, well, first of all, from a health point of view, it's devastating, but even if it wasn't, from a security point of view, how hackable is that then by agents of other governments? Stay there, Mark. Going to take a very quick break. It's only 2 minutes, and when we come back, we'll talk more about that, the legalities of it, what you're doing in Gateshead, what people around the country might be able to do to try and put a halt to it as it's being rolled out. And there's a couple of things come to mind as well about the testing of this. So Mark's going to stay with me. Very quick break. Back in a minute, I should say, with Mark Steele. Back in 90 seconds.
Introducing the H2O app, a powerful water structuring application that programs vibrational energies into water through the use of different sound frequencies. Once programmed, the use of water for drinking, cooking, bathing. Give it to your friends and colleagues or spread it around the garden. The list goes on. It's not just water that the app can be used for either. It's great for programming crystals too. The H2O app is free to download and is available on both Android and Apple platforms. For further information, go to h2oapp.online.
Have you lost access to important data from a computer hard drive, mobile phone, or other storage device? Maybe you have a broken hard drive containing years of information, or a smartphone that no longer works from which you'd like the pictures, movies, and chats recovered. If you would like to recover data from any type of digital device, including desktop and laptop computers, external hard drives, cameras, smartphones, NAS, and RAID servers, then contact Data Clinic today at dataclinic.co.uk now.
There's a place high in the mountains of Spain, a sanctuary where souls gather from all around the globe to learn about themselves and experience powerful changes in the way we see our world. They become awakened to their gifts and their power to heal others. Become part of this ever-growing worldwide family of unique, pure energy healing practitioners. Discover how amazing you truly are. Go to www.markbayerski.com. It could just change your life forever.
Right, welcome back to the programme. It is Monday's show, the 19th of March 2018. Mark Steele is my guest. Fascinating, disturbing, but hugely important conversation, this, the information that Mark has been talking about, the rollout of 5G with no assent, with no permission from the people of the country, being done without the express permission of the UK taxpayer. Mark has talked about these transmitters on thousands of lampposts in Gateshead, the abilities that these transmitters bring with them, the abilities to 3D map cities, to 3D map your home, but not also that, the wavelength and the form that wavelength takes and what it can do to the human body, what it can do to our biology and the biology of insects and other animals as well. Mark, what about, I know you've been challenging the legality of this and the fact that it hasn't been tested. We talked about this earlier on, and the fact that this is being done not just without the consent of the population in Gateshead, but also without their knowledge. People don't know anything about this. When you've mentioned this, or when you've challenged the local authority on that particular point, what have they said?
They've totally just shut down. They've shut the democratic process down in Gateshead. They've refused to answer any of the FOIs. They stated that they would have me back, obviously, to answer the second question. I did call the chief executive criminal, by the way, so they no doubt got themselves a bit upset, but that's actually a matter of fact. So they've just basically shut the whole thing in. Labour Party MPs, everybody's just putting their head down. This thing's that bad. I mean, this is a bigger story than Jimmy Savile, Hillsborough, you name it. I mean, this is the biggest story on the planet. And I can understand it, they're terrified of the implications. And when the general public find out what's happening, they're not going to be very happy.
Now, you think, don't you, that they're bound to figure it out? If it's not 2018, 2019, 2020, but within the next few years, if your research is right and the health implications are as serious as you believe them to be, not just you but others, well then it'll be inescapable, won't it?
It's inescapable now. We've already seen a total population collapse in small sparrows, small flying insects. We've seen a total annihilation event in our near locality. But Richie, I'd like to go back to this IC and IRP because obviously, a lot of these organisations are relying on this particular organisation. This is the International Body for Non-Ionising Radiation Protection. And it was set up to protect us all from non-ionising radiation. It's very interesting that any risk at all has been identified or even a body set up to protect us, as the guidelines that are derived from exposure to partial body and head from non-ionising radiation are a thermal value. It's SART, specific absorption value rate. It's 2 watts per kilo the details of which are a little bit more complicated, but not for today. It's a cooking value. So as long as you aren't cooking too much and only cooking a little bit, we are all safe, or so say our regulatory bodies, institutions, and tech industry. However, these cooking values are derived from exposure to body masses of 200-pound males, not pollinators, not children, not your pets, not the unborn, and if you're under 14 stone, not you. It should be stressed here that at an international conference held in London in 2008, Professor Paolo Vecchia, head of IC and IRP, said about the exposure guidelines, what they are not the mandatory prescriptions for safety. They are not the last word on the issue, and they are not defensive walls for industry or others. But that is exactly what they have become, used as a defensive wall against the very many published and cited growing scientific research papers showing the hazard posed by non-thermal microwave radiation. The current 3G, 4G experimental transmitters have been risk assessed against, none of them being risk assessed against smaller bodied living things like pollinators or the unborn. There are no long-term studies or research showing chronic exposure is safe. None. Absolutely zero. Recently, the head of protection, PHE, made a statement at a public hearing in Gateshead. It was made by Councillor McElroy, where I submitted a question to the council about their illegal covert 5G hardware rollout impacting small flying insects, birds, and small children, in which she stated that my assumption, Mark Steele's assumption, that microwave radiation has a more deleterious effect on smaller biological living things in structures, including children, was not borne out in science. Now, this is a very worrisome statement. Could only come from someone with no basic knowledge of the laws of physics, never mind the head of PHE's dosimetry. A layperson understands that energy applied to a smaller body has a more impact and effect, and the reason a 1 pound chicken takes less time to cook than a 5 pound bird. The Institute of Electrical and Electronic Engineers, a resource PHE rely on, shows the SAR values of microwave radiation emitted from the same source are in fact more impacting to a 5-year-old's head as opposed to an adult. I mean, you're talking 48% more here. Gateshead Council and others are currently relying on PHE's advice so they can irradiate their populations with an illegal experimental 5G transmitter network in breach of the Nuremberg Code and basically turning the country inside of a microwave oven. I mean, this is evidence for the International Criminal Court, of which I am taking quite a bit.
I've got to mention this too, Mark, to be fair to you. Mark mentioned there that academics and scientists, what we might call mainstream people, have expressed real concern, grave concerns about this. And he's right to say that, because over the weekend I looked for some names, and there are plenty of names. Joel Moskowitz from the University of Berkeley has been screaming blue murder about this in California, but nobody's listening to him. Desiree Jaworski, woman who heads up the Centre for Safe Wireless, also a scientist, absolutely concerned by the fact that you can't get away from this. And in fact, what she says echoes what Mark has been saying. That is, previously you could choose not to live very close to a cell tower with all the satellite dishes, whacking out the EMF. But with this, you can't move away from it. It's going to be absolutely everywhere. So there are, and those are only two. I could name many more academics from academic institutions that our listeners would be aware of asking these questions.
Richie, one of the guys I cite all the time is Professor Martin L. Powell. He does quite a few interesting videos, lectures on YouTube. Martin's one of the leading experts in the world. I'm not the main expert in microwave radiation. What I know a lot about, what you talked about before, is light addiction, how these devices are actually addictive, how they open up neural pathways in your head. And I know how they do. That's pretty interesting. In fact, if you look at some of the patents on pulsing lights and how they are addictive, and how some of the architecture and the games the Facebooks, the some of the trickery that's used to actually addict children to these devices. It's one of the reasons why they kind of put them down. And the neurological disorders they suffer are mainly caused not by the visual imagery, even though it's a problem, but by the antennas, the transmitters, and that's what's causing the neurological, the absolutely stratospheric neurological disorders. Going back to scientists, 270 of the world's leading scientists have called for a moratorium on 5G.
But the media is absent. You see, the media is absent.
The media. I mean, it's great. People should support your show. When this goes out, I hope people are going to support this show. There's an organisation that has been set up. Some people, very concerned citizens in the Northeast. It's called Save Us Now. I think you'll probably post the website up.
Yeah.
These organisations need support. They need, we need to get this story out. We need to knock on doors. We need to tell people, try not to use social media. It's a controlled space. Like I said before, this is the biggest story. This is bigger than the Holocaust. This will kill, 5G will kill more people than whatever gassed in those ovens. Believe you me, I've got the data. I've got the data rates. These experimental waveforms, we just do not know how many people they will kill. We just do not know.
It's a weapon, as you described it earlier on, as not being a communication system. It's a weapon system.
It's masquerading. It's masquerading as a communication system. I mean, you wouldn't get people to fit it if you told them what it really was.
And I'm listening to you, and I've been making shows for a long time, producing other people and making my own, and I've got a very good memory. It's about the only thing that I can claim that's a little bit out of the ordinary. I've got a photographic memory. I remember everything I ever read and everything I ever did. And I remember years ago, certain pharmaceutical companies, GlaxoSmithKline and others, when certain tablets, that Creox and others, medications that they put on the market that were very harmful to people, and then there was litigation, there was mass tort lawsuits, and some of these companies, pharmaceutical companies, they were found liable and they had to pay out hundreds of millions of dollars. The worst part of those court cases was not that Big Pharma was putting bad medicine on the market. That's bad enough. But what we learned, Mark, journalists who covered these cases, was that they trialled these drugs in third world countries. They trialled these drugs in places where people have less than nothing, and they had nobody to speak up for them. So they were able to bribe them with a few bucks a day to take part in these clinical trials. I mean, this was evil beyond. You talked about the man with the white pussycat and all that. It's beyond evil, this. And I've been listening to you raptured for the last 35 minutes, 40 minutes or thereabouts. And I'm thinking, they've probably trialled this technology, Mark. And they've done it in the poorest parts of the world to see the effects it's had on people. I've no doubt in him. I can't prove that. That's just a suspicion.
No, I have, Richie. That's what
they must have done.
They're actually trialling it here. It's actually on trial in the West. And we're seeing the epidemiological data, the collapse in the population, the cancer increases, the diabetes increases, the heart increases, Alzheimer's, dementia, all the illness, the neurological disorders, all the kids, the self-harm. The local GPs have reported a 68% in young women self-harming. I mean, this is absolutely appalling. Professor Martin Pal, he in a published, very, very well cited paper in 2015 showed that non-thermal microwave radiation causes significant neurological damage. Veterans coming back, veterans suffering from, this post-traumatic stress nonsense. What they're suffering from is the bombardment in the battlefield from battlefield interrogation equipment. You have to remember, all of this equipment is built for battlefield. It's built for interrogation of battlefield. It's built for signal processing. It's how I know quite a bit about it. It's built for secret and covert weaponry. I'm speaking out. This is a humanitarian crime of biblical proportions. And, what we've got to get out on this particular show. People need to speak to lawyers. We need barristers. We need honourable barristers, human rights barristers. I've got the evidence.
You have
the evidence. The US senator has recently spoken out about this technology.
And you're supported.
We have to bring this to the public's attention. The people just don't know that children are going to die. This technology is going to kill everything. We lose all our pollinators, and that's the day. Within less than, I think it was in September 2016 when Gated Council fitted these transmitters to lights. I first came across it. I started suffering sore eyes, couldn't sleep at night. I got a knock on the door from my neighbour. The closest transmitter to my bedroom's about 15 metres, 20 metres. I had a knock on the door from my neighbour, and she said, "Mark, we've put these lights in. It's making me nosebleed." I said, "Debbie, there's no way I like to make a nosebleed. However," and I saw the antenna, and I thought, the transmitter, I thought, there's nobody mad enough to put a transmitter on an LED streetlight, because I immediately worked out that you just wouldn't do it.
You wouldn't do it, no.
However, I was proved to be incorrect, and they had
done it. And your support, I've got to mention this, I've got to keep mentioning this. Mark is supported, not directly, but indirectly supported by some of the names I mentioned earlier on, academics, professors, scientists around the world. This is the thing, you see, and the reason I mentioned the media being absent, Mark, is because I put a little article on my website, half by way of a joke, but also it was serious, about the release of a new Samsung phone last week. It was delivered to hundreds of thousands of homes on the Friday, and apparently 1 million people went out and spent £800 plus over the weekend to buy it, the people who didn't get it through their phone companies. Now, why am I mentioning that? Well, because BBC and Sky covered the release of this phone and talked it up as a wonderful thing. And as part of that coverage, they said, and this, this will go nicely. It will fit neatly with 5G. Isn't it brilliant? 5G. 5G is great technology and all of that. And the media is absent. So our media, the producers of the big primetime television news programmes here, which would be the Andrew Marr show on the BBC, the Daily Politics on BBC 2 of an afternoon, those producers are aware that this information is in the public domain. These professors, like the ones we've mentioned, who've said, look, this is dangerous, and yet they don't touch it. They don't entertain the idea of phoning one of those scientists to say, well, listen, while all this is going on, the new iPhone, the new Samsung phone, let's get you on for a bit of balance. There's no balance. This information is ignored, right?
Richie, going back to gagging salaries, these people are paid enormous amounts of money to keep their mouth shut.
Yeah,
this is why everybody's scratching their head about the stratospheric increases in chief executive salaries. It's to keep their heads down, don't say anything. I mean, we've seen a 140% increase in women suffering thyroid cancer. We've got autism increases. One of the things that people don't talk about, and this is a very, very important issue, these transmitters are charging the particles in air. Those particulate contaminants, you're breathing them into your lung. So you're breathing in charged particles. Now, we just do not know what this is. I mean, 31,875 transmitters in a small area like Gateshead Borough. This is not the only area in the country. And, one of the things that, because I like I said, whoever's listening to this, we do not know what other, let's say, our adversaries, don't really know who they are, but who are any adversaries out there. The US military have just started to decentralize their battlefield interrogation systems, so everything they use. Now, the reason why they're doing that is because their systems have been compromised. If the US military can't secure their battlefield interrogation neural network and systems, believe you me, Gateshead Council, GCHQ can't secure this. That means they've opened up the whole country with internet Swiss cheese. I call it a Swiss cheese because it's full of holes, built deliberately, by the way, backdoors, etc. they've opened up the whole country to an attack. This is absolutely outrageous. I mean, 5G is a Trojan horse. It's poor encryption. It's opened up the whole of the critical energy infrastructure because these 5G transmitters talk to your smart meter. Can you imagine just pulling down the whole? And that's not to mention autonomous vehicles. I mean, you take control of an autonomous car, and I mean, this is just
cause carnage.
This is just so badly thought out. I mean, the poor mental health of this country. It's a crippling economic impediment. It's costing the economy £99 billion a year. £99 billion a year. I mean, we just cannot. And that's just one. That's one issue. What about the diabetes? What about the heart disease? What about stroke? Stroke is absolutely stratospheric. In America recently, and I know this is what's causing these particular issues, and I'll go on to that. Stroke in the US here in young women. We're not talking about old people. That's, it's talked about in the mainstream press. We're talking about young women here, 18 to 30-year-old. The increase in strokes up by 38%. Now, that's absolutely catastrophic numbers. We know microwave radiation damages the blood-brain barrier. It also increases blood pressure. There's the mechanism. In what actually the damning piece of data, from the same geolocation, the increase in stroke has been 15%. While that's absolutely catastrophic for young men, the fact that it's a 38% over the same period from the same geolocation is 38% increase in young women. So it's young women and children, who are on the front line in relation to this pollution, by the way, and it's all down to body density and body size.
Do you know what you just said there? You mentioned that it raises blood pressure. One of the things I noted in my little piece about the release of the Samsung brand new phone is there is a brand new app on the phone. It's not brand new. It's a thing called Samsung Health, where you can put your finger on a sensor on the back of the phone and you can test your heart rate. That isn't new. But this brand new phone, they've added a new feature. You can download a bit of software that will enable this to take your blood pressure. And apparently it's very, very accurate. Here's the kicker, Mark. It's not for anybody. It's not for anybody. Users who want to access the blood pressure monitor on their phone must consent to taking part in a study by some third-party company that's licensed this software to Samsung so that they can do an experiment and monitor people's blood pressure. Nobody's going to tell me that's unrelated to the fact that the 5G, the 4G, all of this is a carrier for a waveform that can significantly harm or raise your blood pressure. It's got to be related.
And so,
right, must be.
The reason why I'm chuckling away to myself is anybody who'd be daft enough. Weapon systems. There's some of the weapon systems, right, can be pretty precise on understanding what people's blood rhythms, heart rhythms are, firing cancellation waves at them and stuff like that. I mean, I have been around the horses a little bit, and like I said, the involvement I had with this particular professor a number of years ago, some of the conversations I had with him would absolutely terrify you. I don't go in for that, because obviously what we need to do here is to bring the vast majority of people along to understand the implications. I implore everyone, do your own research. Check out Martin Pal. Check up Environmental Health Trust in the USA. Deborah Davis, Professor Deborah Davis, one of the people who's highlighting this issue. The problem we have, there's a drive to gather data. It comes from the USA. It's a data gathering imperative. However, the risks involved are absolutely existential. I mean, I had a cousin. I was explaining to my cousin about the 3D capability, the mapping capability, and he said, I've got nothing to hide. I hear this story quite a bit. I've got nothing to hide.
Yeah.
Got nothing really to worry about. I said, well, I know, but I said that radiation's going to kill you, your children, your pets. Because I said the data gathering is really just a piece of data gathering, but the signals that they're using will reduce your life expectancy. I said, stop putting in your pen. I mean, it's funny, government wants everybody to put money into pensions. Well, guess what? You get 5G. You're not getting your pension. You're not getting it. I can show you the exposure rates from these transmitters, right, over time will reduce your life expectancy by 15 to 20 to 30 years. I'm really concerned about children being born today who may not even get past 30. And I'm not trying to be alarmist here. I can actually give you the data. The scientific published research is available. People just need to have a look. One of the reasons why Lloyd's of London, I mean, if that doesn't tell people, Lloyd's of London will not insure, indemnify any transmission device that got caught out with the asbestosis. They're not going to get caught out again. And if, this then leaves, because going back to the business side of it, any chief executive, any executives, any shareholders, the shareholders are liable. This is not to talk about, the other issues, the resonant frequency issues, the increase in energy. I mean, you talk about fires. We all know that Grenfell Tower was an absolute tragedy. However, if I was to tell you that the 3G, 4G devices in that building, including our smart meters, increase the fire risk, obviously you're basically just pouring microwave radiation energy. You're priming a building for fire. You're priming it because you're basically pouring more energy in. It's like pouring petrol on a fire. And if you speak to any of the first responders, any of the fire brigade who went there, they were absolutely astounded at the ferocity of that fire. I wasn't astounded at all. In fact, I just thought, well, that's just one of the modern day fires that you're going to see from these type of transmission devices. The ubiquitous increase in microwave radiation in homes is going to lead to more of this. This is going to be, we're just going to have to get used to it.
Mark, do us a favour. We're just out of time. Give our listeners, I'm going to tweet links. Well, they will appear on Twitter through my Facebook posts. I'm out of Twitter at the moment. I'm locked out. I can't get into it. No, they haven't locked me out. I haven't been banned or anything. Right. They keep sending me, they tell me they send me a 6-digit text message to secure, so I can securely get back into my account, and I never get the text, and it's a nightmare and I can't get in. But anyway, in the 45 seconds we have left, where can people read more, find out more about what you've been doing, particularly people who are hearing this for the first time?
Well, I would implore anybody. There's an organisation setting up in the northeast called saveusnow.org.uk. We're looking for people to join to organise that one chapters around the country, so that we can get some guys. We've got some guys there who are organising posters so we can get this story out. So get to Save Us Now. There's some information there, but if we'll post stuff up, we'll get some stuff up. I'm advising these guys from a technical perspective about it. But what I want to say to everybody, this is really important. 5G is illegal. It's illegal. And under international laws, you are obliged to act. Not acting is a crime. Right? We're taking evidence, because obviously we're being blocked and challenged. We've got MPs just ignoring what we're telling them. Right? They're ignoring us. However, this is going to end up in the international criminal courts. Those that block and challenge the narrative, those that lie, those that, shut people down. The people keep posting tinfoil hats on Facebook pages, etc. Yeah. All that sort of garbage. Be warned. This is an international crime. You are believers. We are taking notes. We're taking reference of who these people are. I was contacted by a lady on Sunday. A 5-year-old boy is bleeding from the nose at night from this technology. 5-year-old boy. Save Alfie. Poor little boy. What about the neurological damage? What about the miscarriages? What about the baby killers? Because that's what this microwave radiation is capable of. It kills babies in the womb before they're born. We're pretty sure about what the mechanism is. But what about the neurological disorders to unborn fetuses that are being born and the impact on the economy? It's, not just apart from the human tragedy of this, of stroke victims in very, very young age. What about the economic impact? If I was a foreign power trying to attack a country, this would be a very, very clever way to do it. And what I'm suggesting is somebody may have the knowledge that I have and may have planned this. So we have to be more aware, and the people who are listening to this need to understand, like I said before, this is an international crime. We have a duty as human beings to act.
Right, I'm going to say that. I'm going to say that one more time. SaveUsNow.org.uk. SaveUsNow.org.uk. I'm going to put links to your YouTube channel on Facebook. Thanks for coming on and talking to us about it, Mark. We'll obviously follow what you're doing, and Save Us Now is doing really closely. And when appropriate, you're welcome to come back on and update us as to any news that we might need to hear. I've enjoyed speaking to you despite the seriousness of the subject, and I do appreciate your time.
No problem, Richie. Well, Richie, I'd like to come back on and talk about autonomous vehicles, electric vehicles, and all the technology and the multiple billions of pounds that are being wasted on these technological cul-de-sacs where they have not been risk assessed. This is a total paradigm shift to how any engineering technology projects would have ever been carried out in the past.
We'll certainly make time for that, Mark. There's no doubt about that. Thanks so much for your time today. I appreciate it.
Brilliant. Great speaking to Richie. Thanks, everybody. Bye.